we've spent a lot of time on the CDC study. Is there any other study that is not CDC linked that people could go to see if there's any corresponding information? Because I totally understand it's happening. There's no way I don't believe that. But is there a way that someone else is actually doing studies that can actually show real figures?
Sadly, this was the last study. Based upon this study, the Institute of Medicine recommended no further funding for vaccine safety research in the context of autism, and that was it. So 2004, it all came to a grinding halt. So any studies that are being done now are being done by private institutions. There are 2 studies going on at the moment, one looking at homeschoolers in a vax-on-vax study, children who are completely vaccinated versus children who've received all of the vaccines, to look at long-term health outcomes. That was something that Congress mandated, the CDC refused to do, so it's fallen on private institutions to do that. The problem then comes, how do you get them published? Because the major publications, the medical publications, to give any credence to your paper, are also controlled to a large extent by the pharmaceutical industry. So it becomes extremely difficult for you, the public, to ever get truly unbiased science delivered to you.
No other country is doing any studies that are not linked to private companies?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
You can look up Dr. Buchwald. His name is spelled B-U-C-H-W-A-L-D. He was a famous lung specialist in Germany, and he talks extensively about the measles vaccine and the MMR. You'll be surprised what you find out. He was brought before the Quebec board in 1996, and he discussed this very issue then. He died, I believe, in 2007 or 9. I can't be sure. But if you look him up, there's a lot of information you can find online now.
Would you repeat his spelling?
B-U-C-H-W-A-L-D. I can't remember his first initial. I don't know if it's M or R, but if you just look up Dr. Buchwald, and I think that's the way you say it, and just put in there lung specialist Germany, tons of information will come up, and you can read information that's even prior on the MMR to what the CDC did in 2001, and get a ton of information.
Yeah, gentleman in the back. Oh, sorry, then. Sorry, I'm so sorry. It's so dark back there, I can't tell.
He's blind.
It's so dark back there, I'm so sorry.
No problem. And thank you very much. And I just have to say that Dr. Wakefield, you are my hero. And Polly and Sheila, you are my heroines for what you have been through and what you continue to go through. This is my 3rd time to see the film. I just want to tell my story. I don't really exactly have a question because I asked Dr. Wakefield last night the question. So, but I have a comment that I want to make. And I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse since 1973. I always thought vaccines were safe. You know, my children got them like apple pie, baseball, yay, vaccines, you know. And I never thought much about it until I had to give vaccines when I started to work in the occupational health industry. I had to start to give the flu vaccines to our employees. And I knew very little about vaccines. We were educated on the need for them by the drug company that was selling us the vaccines. I'm sorry to say all of my coworkers just ate it all up. Everything was fine. I had a gentleman come in and he said to me, I don't want 5-aerosol in my vaccine. And I wasn't even sure what 5-aerosol was. And it was like, what's for you? What's your problem? And so I asked my coworker, what's 5-aerosol? And she says, oh, I think it's mercury. I says, mercury? I says, we're injecting mercury into our employees? That was in 2003. I went home and I started to do research. And I'm still doing research to this day. And I have to say, what I have found is just horrific. But what really turned me on to the danger of vaccines and to the complicity of drug reports. I was aghast at what I heard, aghast at what I read, I'm sorry. I called up and I went to talk to the editor of this newsletter, Dr. Wexler, I believe. She wasn't there, so I talked to the nurse in charge. And I said, well, the reason I'm saying this is because the newsletter, I turned over to the back page of the newsletter, and it said, we want to thank our major supporters for contributing to the printing of this newsletter. The major supporters were 8 pharmaceutical companies. 8. Their primary supporter was the CDC.
Yeah.
I said to this nurse, how can you be objective when the pharmaceutical companies manufacturing the vaccines are the major supporters for the ACIP? And she says, well, you don't believe drug companies, do you? And I said, well, they're your major supporters. They're doing your advertising for you. She said, I don't believe that. Well, from that day forward, I have been such an advocate for vaccine safety, and I'm sorry to say that most of the nurses that I know and have talked to are not on the same page at all with me. I go to nursing conferences. I say something against vaccines, I am shut down. And one nurse might have the courage to say to me privately, I'm glad you said what you said, but I don't have the courage to say it. But what I want to say is for people here, because this is such a horrific problem, 1 in 45. When I was growing up, it was 1 in 10,000. 1 in 45 children are being destroyed and families being destroyed as these moms know. If you can, I just talked to a nurse the other day. She's an RN in a pediatrics office. I told her to come see this film. I said, do you know that newborn babies get hepatitis B vaccine? She had no idea. Nurses don't know, doctors don't know. So just talk to people. Talk to your nurses, just tell them. You just, whatever you can, just give them websites to go to. But not the CDC website.
Thank you.
Information out there, but nurses do not know. And people trust nurses. You trust us. You trust us. We're one of the most trusted professions in the world. And I'm sorry to say that nurses are not educated and their opinions cannot be trusted. And I thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much. Please bring people to see this film. What that does is every time you pack this theatre out, it opens up another theatre, another city across the country, across the world. So this is the way in which to get this message out to the people. Right, the lady there, and then someone at the back, with blonde hair, okay? You first, and then you second, and then this gentleman on the end.
I want to thank you very much for speaking out for us, because this is my 16-year-old daughter, and at age 5, she had received all of her kindergarten vaccines. Within 3 hours, her fever was up to 105.7. She has lost her vision. She can tell you in detail what it felt like when her brain swelled. She remembers losing her vision. She can't see 2 inches in front of her face without contacts, and her vision will never be 100% corrected. But because of doctors like you and our holistic family doctor, she wants to go to college and be a holistic doctor. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that story. That's wonderful. Lady at the back.
My name is Kathy, and I have 2 members of my family, 18 and a 4-year-old child with autism. My speech right now is because I had surgery 3 days ago to remove scarring from my tongue, from gadolinium poisoning. And I would like to ask the parents in here and the caregivers, how many of your children have had MRIs with contrast? The gadolinium is building up in our bodies. It is not chelating from our bodies. We're told it's gone in 96 hours. I am a member of a study we did on SurveyMonkey. We brought it to the attention of the FDA. It's called gadolineumtoxicity.com. And we're trying to let people know that this happens and it's causing scarring within the body. And if your child already has deficits in their abnormalities in their brain, you're not really going to see it. But there are some physical aspects to their skin and the way their arms are, and the way their skin gets hardened. It's called nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, but for those people, it's not affecting nephrogenically, it's affecting them systemically. So initially, your body essentially is turning into a statue, and it's hardened. I've had 9 biopsies to prove it. I was told and warned by a major doctor in New York that was a toxicologist that I would never prove this. So go see a psychiatrist to deal with the ramifications of you having a disease that you're not going to be able to prove. And I'll be damned if I go down or I see kids go down, that I'm not going to fight this to the end. And I do have the exposure from having had Lyme. If they didn't miss our Lyme and not diagnose us with Lyme, we wouldn't have had all the MRIs that we've had. I thank you, and I just want you to know, go to that website, find out there's testing on mayomedicallabs.com. They will test urine and blood and dermal biopsies if needed, and it gets sent out. The child doesn't have to travel to Mayo, but we are slowly but surely proving it. And over the summer, I'm going to take place in a 3-part population study, find out how much comes out. I still have the drug in my body 7 years after the last time I had the drug. This is a drug that could be affecting every one of your loved ones, and I urge you all to have them tested. The more people we prove it's in them, the more people we're going to save from having had these drugs into them.
And what's that website?
It's called gadolinium, GADOLINIUM, toxicity.com.
So maybe if this is pertinent to anyone, please find this lady afterwards outside and catch up. That would be very helpful. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
I have a daughter who was living overseas for 4 years or so. She had a child who is now basically has dual citizenship, Thailand and the United States, and they've emigrated back to the United States. When she has been back here about 9 months now, and she had no job, no health insurance, nothing. She's living with my ex-wife at the moment, and she applied for state subsidy for childcare so that she could go out and get a job. But the only way that they would give them subsidize it was for my daughter to have a limited ceiling on her earning capability, and that ceiling was below a living wage for a single person, much less a woman with a young child. So she's gone out and she's gotten herself a job, and she's had to hide it from the authorities because the minute they see that she's actually earning a wage greater than that limit, they're going to take away that subsidy, and she needs the subsidy in order to have her child in daycare in order to be able to work. Because she's in a subsidized daycare situation, they are insisting that the little girl receive all these vaccines. She's 20 months old right now, and I've been telling my daughter about this, about your film and about this controversy, and saying, please, 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 before you do anything, go and see, take a look at this debate and make a decision for yourself. My question is, what do you recommend that someone in a situation like that do when they cannot find any kind of public child care services that do not insist that the children be given these vaccines, and is there any kind of a major support group that someone like my daughter could go to receive assistance and at least camaraderie with other people that are working with a similar issue in order to protect her child? I mean, right now her attitude is, well, I'm going to have to get her vaccines because it's required. And I'm saying, well, you're gambling with her health. You're gambling with her future.
Where does the child live?
Excuse me?
Where does she live?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, no. No, she can't. No.
Anyone from Pennsylvania can answer that?
Yes.
There's
Chester County, Pennsylvania.
I'm Charmaine. I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Coalition for Informed Consent, and we're a
So you can find that information through nvic.org. They're a really wonderful resource, and you can also point your daughter there for more information about how to make an informed decision. And then we have some information and resources that she can contact us at info@pacic.org, and I can give you a handout too afterward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. So there are two ladies at the back, the one right at the back and then the lady in front. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then your question, yes.
Hello. As a doctor, do you, you found issue with the MMR vaccine, but it seemed that through the videos we were watching that you still recommend vaccinations. I wanted to hear your point on that. And also, if you've ever heard of Dr. Tenpenny, and she supposedly did research on the polio virus, and she said that it was also dubbed. And so, because I used to say, okay, well, maybe some vaccines are not good and some are okay that we need. And, but, listening to her lecture and all of her research, it seems that a lot of our information that we've received is not necessarily correct.
Right, I do not recommend vaccinations or not recommend them. What I recommend, what I insist upon is that parents have the right to choose exactly what goes into their children's bodies. What I do recommend is that they have the choice of the single vaccines. Now they can take or leave each one of those single vaccines or all of them if they want, but it has to be the parental choice. What I'm saying is that that choice is not available to parents at the moment. We did not see autism being reported as a consequence of the single vaccines, and therefore I have major reservations about the MMR. It's not my job to recommend to anyone whether they get vaccinated or not, but I think that mandatory vaccination is abhorrent and that it must always reside with the parent. They must always be fully informed.
Can I just say something very quickly on that? The problem is, as this gentleman here was saying, is that the young parents of today, like his daughter, are being bullied. And that's where, and they have, they're not, we don't have medical degrees, we're parents doing whatever we can out in the world. So that's where the breakdown is that this girl is being told she can't work unless she gets a kid vaccine or can't get money or whatever it is. And people like that other lady that stood up with her organisation, we need to know, everybody needs to know about you, and I don't know how we do that here in, where are we? Philadelphia. I don't know how we do that, but everyone needs to know about you because these poor mothers walking around like I used to be, and I had a choice, I just believed my doctor. Right. So we need to educate the young parents coming from, that's everybody's duty in this room. All those vaccine injured parents that stood up like Sheila and I, we have to get to them. There is no job and no money in the world worth risking your granddaughter's life.
Thank you. I have sort of a follow-up question with that. Doctor, your recommendation that people look at the single vaccines, I forget the name of the MIT professor.
Stephanie Seneff.
Yes. I've seen a couple of videos of her long before I actually knew about the Vaxxed movie, brouhaha. And she made a comment in previous interviews that many of these vaccines have, in addition to the mercury, have formaldehyde and aluminum and MSG in them. Yep. And that the reason that they have that in them is so that the pharmaceutical companies can guarantee an immune response, even though their immune response might not be to the disease they're being vaccinated for, but happen to be for these toxic components that are put in there. My question is, are those toxic components that she's talking about, aren't they also present in the single vaccines beyond the MMR, mixture?
It's a live viral vaccine, so there's no mercury, there's no aluminum. There are other issues with them. There are contaminating viruses. They're a major problem, but this comes down to fully informed consent. Okay, parents need to know this. They need to be told about this. They need to read the product insert. They need to be told by their pediatricians that these contain things that we know about and they contain things potentially that we don't know about. That is fully informed consent, and I can assure you that if you were fully informed about what was in these vaccines, you would be very unlikely to take them. Now you jumped in there, so it was that lady's turn there. So, yes, and then this lady here, and then the gentleman standing up. Yes.
Hi, my name is Bridget. I have a 4-year-old completely unvaccinated child. I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, it has been shown that children have died from vaccines. Is there any reason why you chose to exclude actual facts on vaccine deaths in your documentary? Number 2, politics and vaccines with this upcoming election. We know that Hillary Clinton is heavily backed by the pharmaceutical companies. What do you feel the result could be as far as this continuation into the rates of autism and control over our citizens to basically not have control over our children's bodies?
Okay.
Here's the deal with Hillary Clinton. I will say this. We have Hillary Clinton to thank for the increased rate of vaccinations in this country. She did that in the 90s. And vote. Vote, vote, vote. Vote them out of office. Don't vote them in office, but vote. It is our constitutional right.
It's hard because of the money situation.
It might be hard, but let's keep going.
Already elected based on the status. They feel she will.
Yeah. Okay, guys, hold on. The first and the answer to the second part is that we were not given any disclosure in this film from William Thompson about deaths following vaccines. So this was specifically about the fraud. Doesn't mean that other vaccines are off the hook or vaccines aren't causing a multitude of other problems. This is the story about the CDC fraud. We had a 3-hour documentary that we had to cut down to 90 minutes. So that's what this is. Okay, yes, this lady here. Please be very quick because they need to get us out of here.
Okay, so it's an election year, so the president, that's all wonderful, but we all know that it starts with your representatives, it starts with your
That's
senators.
right.
What questions do we need to ask the senators and representatives who are running for office? What questions should we ask them to find out where they stand on this? And if they get into office, are they going to demand that this information is secret?
All right, I would take these 4 bullet points and I would present them to them, and I would say these 4 action points, and I'd say, what are you going to do about each and every one of these? And then if they're not going to do what you want, you say, I'm not going to vote for you, I'm going to vote for the opposition.
They can see Vaxxed as well.
Yeah, and they need to see Vaxxed. If they care about this, they need to see Vaxxed. Guys, that was the last question. I'm so sorry. The gentleman standing up. Is it a quick question, sir? Or?
MMR, when did that happen? When was that initiated? In the 60s or 70s?
In the early 70s, MMR was licensed. It was not the vaccine of choice for many years because they were paid for the individual vaccines. Then it became the vaccine of choice after the National Vaccine Initiative in 79, and the uptake was very low for many, many years and increased gradually. Then it was mandated, and beyond that time it's gone up.
Very quickly, how did it go from Canada, Brazil, meningitis to autism? In the film, you said it started in Canada, and they threw it away, went to Brazil, meningitis. How did we get to autism?
Right, different disease.
Right.
It wasn't. Let's catch up with that in a minute, though. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry. This is Nicholas with Main Street Victory News, and I'm standing here with
Kathy Pogorzelski.
Kathy Pogorzelski. Okay, and we were talking earlier about some condition that you had, and you wanted to share some information?
It's called gadolinium toxicity. I had undiagnosed Lyme that went undiagnosed for 22 plus years. In pursuit of my diagnosis, I had to have testing, and I had a bunch of MRIs done. The MRIs contained gadolinium that was injected into my vein in order to highlight the areas of the brain that were affected. What we're finding is that this drug is staying within the bodies of people. It is not chelating from the body. And my concern was for the parents and caretakers of children and adults with autism, that they're becoming additionally affected, and you're not going to really be aware of it because they can't speak for themselves and tell you that their hands are scarring like this. And that I literally 3 days ago had to have my tongue surgically altered because the tendons and the tissue is pulling backward and scarring. It's happening in people who have no kidney disease at all. The FDA is lying again, and they're saying that, oh, we're going to look into it. We have done 2 patient self-studies. We've developed a situation where at gadoliniumtoxicity.com, in order to go to the FDA and say, here's our study, here's our proof. We know that this is in us. I've had 9 biopsies, 2 show fibrosis, 2 show fibrosis with increased mucin in the area. You know, why is a drug still in my body 7 full years after the last time I had an MRI? It doesn't belong there. It's going to be affecting these children. I'm not the only one affected. I'm an adult. I'm 57. You know, this has been going on for years, and they were aware of this up at Yale they came out with gadolinium in 1988. They discovered the disease in 1997 up at Yale, and they did a few, studies. They thought it was a disease of renal dialysis treatment. Couldn't figure out what the common causality was, the causation. And the causation to me is the gadolinium. If I never had this drug, I would have never gotten sick.
And what was this drug administered for?
It was administered for, I had white lesions in my brain in the frontal lobe. And what we're finding out now is that the football players, all these guys that are getting chronic concussions, are coming out with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and they're also developing brain malfunctions, and then when they die, they're testing their brain and finding all this damage. It's not the concussion alone that's causing their problem. It is the gadolinium that is building up in their bodies. These guys aren't aware of it. Like the kids with autism, they're never going to be aware of it unless someone like me breaks it open into the public and says, look into this. Have your child tested. Check their blood, check their urine. If they have any skin disorders, I am losing the skin on my finger. Yeah. And this is just impossible that a drug that was put into me the last time in 2009, November, and here it is causing a problem, and here it is 2016. So I want parents, caregivers, get tested. There's information online at www.gadoliniumtoxicity.com. You'll be able to find testing information. If not, find me on Facebook. My name's Catherine Nichols Pogrzelski, and I can be found on Twitter as well.
Can you spell your last name, because that sounds a little tricky.
P as in Peter, O-G-O-R-Z-E-L-S-K-I, Pogrzelski. Catherine, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I wish you the best.
Thank you.